Welcome back to Morbidly Bewitched. In the last video, I discussed crypts and their origins, and in this video, I bring you a tale of creepy legend and mystery. So stay tuned. So this story actually comes from somewhere you wouldn't really expect it. Off the Caribbean Sea, on the island of Barbados and above the coastal village of Hoistons, sits a churchyard. In this churchyard, nestled against a backdrop of utopia, lies a disused dark vacant vault, which grew to fame across the island in the 19th century. The vault in question is the Chase family vault. It was constructed in 1724 by a James Elliot, and I'm going to have to apologise in advance because I couldn't seem to get pictures of any of these people, one or two, but not all of them. But for whatever reason, James Elliot, even though these things are crazy expensive, didn't use it, and it was purchased by the Chase family. When the Chase family purchased the vault already had a guest, one Ms. Thomasina Goddard, and she was believed to have been a distant relative of the original owner of the vault. But the Chase family still went ahead and they said they would have full respect for the remains of the woman who was already there, and they didn't want her moved. They were just happy enough that she stayed in her restful repose. Now, Colonel Chase, the father of the family, you would think because so much respect was shown to a decedent who had nothing to do with their family, but they let her still remain in the vault, that this would show some kind of kindness on his behalf. But Colonel Chase was not a kind man. In fact, he was quite horrible. Described as a tyrannical plantation owner and patriarch, with a reputation to show his authority behind the handle of a whip and cruelty towards slaves and his own children. What a delightful man. The first Chase family member that required the use of the vault was unfortunately the youngest daughter of the colonels, 2-year-old Mary Ann, on the 22nd of February 1808. It would be only 4 years later that Mary Ann's older sister, Dorcas Chase, passed away. However, her death was suspicious. Even though mortality rates back then for the young were very high, she was an extremely fit young woman, and questions were raised over the cruelty of the father, and they believed that her death was the result of starvation by him. When they got to the family vault, they opened the massive, and I mean this was a humongous marble slab of the entryway. It was approximately half a ton, and it took 7 men to shift it. They were in absolute shock because the 2 coffins that were already there, the original Thomasina Goddard and young Mary, their coffins were just chucked around the vault. They were at the opposite ends, and young Mary, the 2-year-old, her wee coffin was on its head. They were stunned and terrified, but they went ahead and replaced the coffins in their original positions, and Dorcas was added. It would be only 1 month after the death of Dorcas that the delightful Colonel Chase himself passed away. Oh, what a shame. Anyway, and as much as everyone was actually kind of happy that he died because he was a horrible man, they were more concerned at opening this now infamous crypt. But they got there took away the slab, and everything seemed to be as it was. So there was a sigh of relief, and the colonel's monstrosity, a sizable coffin, was placed in amongst the group. Very heavy, lead-lined coffin. The 25th of September 1816 was the next required opening for a young 11-year-old boy, Charles Brewster Ames, who were distant relatives of the Chase family. When they got there and removed the massive slab, they were terrified because it was in complete disarray. The coffins were all over the place, including the Colonel Chase's sizable lead-lined coffin. All of the coffins were rearranged and the young 11-year-old boy was added. In November of the same year, another member of the Brewster family died, Samuel. A huge crowd had gathered because this crypt was now infamous around the entire island. So unfortunately, the massive crowd wasn't for the send-off of young Samuel. No, it was for nosiness. Well, at least you could just say, look how popular I was. Make up. Once again, the coffins were in a mess, an absolute mess. The original occupant, Thomasina Goddard, had been thrown with such force against the far wall that her coffin had broken into bits. She was lying all over the place. So the only thing they could do was gather her up and as neatly as possible place her in the corner that she usually occupied with as much respect and dignity as they could. They put all of the other coffins back where they should have been, and before they left this time, they did a thorough check of the crypt. They checked the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere to see if there was something that indicated foul play or tampering, and they came up fruitless. There was nothing wrong with the structure anywhere. They looked for the tiniest gaps to see if something would make sense, but there was nothing. The final opening for this crazy crypt was for Thomasina Clark, who was the daughter of the original occupant, Thomasina Goddard. Now, approximately 1,000 people showed up for the opening of the crypt because of all of the past reasons. It's bizarre. Everybody wanted to gawk at the opening, including the first Viscount and Governor of Barbados, Cotton. He brought along with him 2 officials to oversee the opening of the crypt, just to, I suppose, witness it firsthand. The governor was in disbelief. The coffins were everywhere. They were on top of each other. Some were in the opposite corner. They were damaged. They were just in a mess. So he demanded that it was all put back into place, but he wanted to put a couple of safeguards in place this time around to catch any form of foul play or tampering. So when the coffins were in situ and nice and neat, he placed a really fine layer of sand across the entire floor, and whenever the massive doorway was put back in place, it was cemented, but he also put his own sigil, his seal, into the cement to try and guard against tampering. The townsfolk of Barbados had had enough. A couple of years had passed and they were still petrified of the Chase family vault. There was complaints put into the government, and after an extremely lengthy discussion, it was agreed to placate the people that the vault would be reopened to see if there was any further foul play. The current mayor, the Honourable Nathan Lucas, and a minister all arrived for the reopening. They checked everything before they even put hammer to chisel. They checked the sigil. It definitely appeared to be the original one that was set in the cement a couple of years prior. Set to work, a couple of stonemasons started chipping away. The massive slab was trailed away, and when they shone the light down into the dark gaping mouth again, the place was as suspected, but still shockingly in complete disarray. The coffins were everywhere. At that point, the governor had had enough. The sand had not been disturbed. There was no footfall. And they checked the entire structure. It was completely sound. He demanded that all of the coffins be removed from the Chase family vault that day and reburied and relocated somewhere else. The vault was then deemed unfit for use and lies dormant to this day. The government of Barbados carried out a thorough investigation, but to no avail. All of the theories came up wanting. From earthquakes to rising water levels, nothing added up. There was no earthquakes or tremors recorded as having happened between the burial times from one to the other. None of the other vaults in the same cemetery, very close to the Chase family vault, were disturbed at all. They were purposely opened to see if any coffins had shifted, and they hadn't. The sigil hadn't been broken. So absolutely nothing added up, and it was and is to this day put down in history as an extremely odd phenomenon that cannot be explained. An awful lot of people put it down to spectral goings on. But what do you think? I have absolutely no idea with this one at all. It's so bizarre. It's just so bizarre. And the only plausible explanation I thought through all of the theories was rising water levels that was insidiously getting into the bottom of the vault, and water levels were rising and pushing coffins around. But these coffins were extremely heavy. They were lead lined, and the crypt itself sat on a height. It would also mean that there would have to be recorded massive waterfall on particular months between the burials, which was also not recorded. The weather was taken into account. Everything was looked into. But absolutely nothing has given a definitive reason for these coffins ending up in such a disarray. So there you go. The strange tale of the moving coffins of Barbados and the Chase family vault. Join me in my next video where I will bring you a slightly shorter but spookier tale of a crypt in Scotland. Please subscribe, and I will see you soon.